Hello and welcome to this next chemistry video. In this video we'll be discussing empirical formulas in chemistry. This is the simplest ratio of all the different types of atoms or elements in this type of molecule or compound. We'll show you how to find these ratios from the masses of each element in this compound after they've been separated from it. The best way to explain it is to use examples, and in this movie we'll be using 3. The first one is where we've found different masses of oxygen and hydrogen in a certain compound. Well, the first thing to do is to find the amount of moles of each element. This is a way of measuring the number of atoms in it. We'll firstly try to find the amount of moles of hydrogen. This is given by this equation, where the amount of moles is equal to the mass divided by the molecular mass. We're given the mass, and we can find the molecular mass from the periodic table. Then we substitute the numbers into the equation. We can then find the amount of moles of hydrogen. We then have to find the amount of moles of oxygen. We use the same equation to find it, as we did before with hydrogen. Then we substitute the numbers into it, and we can thus find the amount of oxygen in moles. We now have to find the ratio of atoms of oxygen to atoms of hydrogen, and this is equal to the ratio of moles of oxygen to the moles of hydrogen. We substitute the amount of moles into it, and we find that 5 is the greatest common factor. And after dividing these numbers by 5, we get a very simple ratio of 1 to 2. And the last stage is to express this ratio as a chemical formula, H2O, which everybody knows is water. Here is a second empirical formula example. It is an element made of nitrogen and hydrogen. The first step is to calculate the amount of each element in moles. Firstly, we find the amount of hydrogen in moles by using this moles equation. To find it by dividing the mass of hydrogen by its molecular mass. We substitute the values in. These values are given in the question and found in the periodic table. And evaluating this expression gives us the amount of hydrogen in moles. We follow a similar process to find the amount of nitrogen in moles. Then we have to find the ratio of nitrogen atoms to hydrogen atoms, which is equal to the ratio of moles of nitrogen to moles of hydrogen. Then we substitute these values in, which we have calculated earlier. And we find a common factor, or term, that reduces these numbers to the simplest possible ratio. In this case it is 7. And so dividing both sides by 7 gives us this very simple ratio of nitrogen to hydrogen atoms. And the final stage is to write the answer as a chemical formula using the numbers in this ratio, and in the case of the number 1 we leave the number out. And in this final example we have to find the ratio of carbon atoms to hydrogen atoms in this molecule. And here we find the moles of hydrogen using the mass of hydrogen and its atomic or molecular mass. And here we find the moles of carbon. And here we use this information to find the simplest ratio of carbon atoms to hydrogen atoms. And finally we express this ratio in terms of a chemical formula.